Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're heading into a recording from Heavenly Story Studio.
Okay.
We've got Sister Grace and Bishop Elijah talking, and well, they're really tackling some big questions for young people.
Mm-hmm. Relationships.
Yeah, relationships and this whole concept of holiness. Our source is just called pasted text. Pretty simple.
Right.
And our goal here is really to, dig beneath the surface of what they're saying, try and understand the core messages about faith, love, and the choices young listeners face.
Well, what immediately jumps out, I think, is just the intention. You hear it right away in Sister Grace's opening prayer.
Yeah, what about it?
It's asking for truth and love, sure, but it's also clearly aiming for, real transformation in people's lives.
Transformation, I think.
It sets a certain tone, acknowledges that the stuff might be challenging, but keeps it positive, hopeful.
That makes sense. And Sister Grace, she invites them to talk real, raw, and redeemed. That phrase kind of stood out to me.
Oh, yeah, that's powerful phrasing.
It feels like she's saying, look, we know it's messy out there, right? With relationships and everything young people deal with.
Exactly. It acknowledges the complexity.
But it also points towards, change being possible.
Yeah.
She frames that tension immediately, modern dating, the love, lust, and vibes, versus this maybe less familiar idea of holiness, and introducing Bishop Elijah as someone who doesn't sugarcoat. That definitely signals we're in for some direct talk.
For sure. And Bishop Elijah starting off by saying, basically, there's significance in you tuning in. That's interesting.
How so?
It creates this immediate sense of connection, like this message is for you right now. It's not just general advice. It feels timely, personally relevant.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. So let's talk about holy. That word comes up a lot. Bishop Elijah goes right into how we see Jesus today.
He does. He really pushes back against what he calls the more casual ways people might think of Jesus.
Like the TikTok version. Or seeing Jesus as just a homeboy.
Right, or even a manifestation coach. And what's key there is he understands that these are ways young people might be relating.
So he's acknowledging the culture.
Yes, but also highlighting a potential gap. A gap between those maybe more contemporary interpretations and traditional religious understanding.
It's a tension he's pointing out then.
Definitely. He draws a line. Relatable is one thing, but he emphasizes what he sees as Jesus's fundamental nature. Holy, set apart, perfect, pure.
He's setting down a theological marker.
Pretty much, saying connection matters, but don't lose sight of this distinct otherness about Jesus that should actually change how we live.
And he connects that directly to why Jesus came, right?
Right.
The sacrifice.
Yes, very clearly.
Yeah.
He says it wasn't just so you could, date better.
Which, let's be honest, is a big focus for a lot of young people.
Absolutely. But he says the purpose was much bigger, to enable a fundamentally different way of living.
That's a much broader call. More challenging maybe than just finding a partner.
Precisely. It shifts the focus. It's not all about romance. It's about this deeper personal transformation through faith, which then, naturally, leads them into talking about cultural norms and relationships.
Right, how those might align or clash with these religious ideas. Sister Grace mentions the current dating scene partners changing often, the focus on vibes, matching energy.
Yeah, and that probably sounds very familiar to a lot of listeners navigating modern dating.
I think so.
And Bishop Elijah's take is immediate. He calls it a potential trap. Something that could actually lead people away from what he calls God's genuine love. Then he gives specific examples.
Like what?
Things he sees as outside God's standard. Sex before marriage, these vague, sneaky links.
Okay, ambiguous stuff.
Yeah, late-night DMs. And he flags that common justification, well, everyone's doing it.
So they're drawing a really stark contrast. Accepted cultural stuff versus these very specific religious principles.
It is stark. And then Bishop Elijah pulls out that verse, Hebrews 12:15.
Without holiness, no one will see the Lord.
Exactly. And he presents it not like a suggestion, but, well, like a non-negotiable truth within their framework.
Wow, that definitely raises the stakes.
It really underscores the seriousness they attach to this idea of holiness, connecting it to your spiritual life, your ultimate destiny even.
Which brings us to that question from Jamal about desire being natural.
Such an important question. If God made us with these feelings, why are they sometimes presented as a problem? So many people grapple with that.
It really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it?
It does. And Bishop Elijah's answer puts desire firmly in the context of marriage, which he calls a sacred covenant.
And he used that analogy, right? The fire one.
Yes, the fire analogy, so effective. Fire in a fireplace contained, useful, good.
But fire on the carpet.
Destructive, dangerous. out of control. It's a really clear way to talk about appropriate versus inappropriate contexts for desire.
So it's not about killing desire, but channeling it.
Exactly, within the boundaries of commitment. He stresses that God is pro-covenant, and then he lists the potential downsides he sees from sex outside of that.
Things like trauma, confusion.
Like trauma, confusion, soul ties, which is a term often used in these circles for deep emotional or spiritual bonds formed outside marriage, and regret. These are heavy words aimed at potential real-life experiences.
Then Sister Grace brings in some empathy, acknowledging listeners who feel stuck.
Right. Caught between their faith and maybe their current relationship, a situationship.
It's like saying, we get it, this is tough.
Yeah, it connects. But Bishop Elijah's response is pretty blunt.
What does he say?
He says if something consistently messes with your peace, compromises your purity, distracts from your purpose, then it's not love, it's bondage.
Bondage. That's a strong word.
It is. It really conveys being trapped in something harmful.
But they don't just leave it there, right? There's hope offered.
Oh, absolutely. That's crucial. Bishop Elijah emphasizes God's power to break those chains, and the invitation isn't to clean yourself up first.
Right, he says come to God for cleansing.
Exactly. You don't have to achieve purity on your own. That's a huge point. It shifts it from striving to grace.
Takes the pressure off needing to be perfect first. Offers a path through faith.
Yes. Which leads right into Bishop Elijah's very direct call to action for the young listeners.
This is where it gets really practical.
Incredibly specific. He urges them, prioritize destiny over feelings, internal purpose over temporary highs.
And he gives actual steps.
Concrete steps. Delete the hookup apps, end toxic dating cycles. Actively ask God to reset your standards.
Wow, that makes it tangible, actionable.
Totally. And that reassurance he gives that no one is too far gone, that's so important for anyone feeling overwhelmed by past choices.
And framing holiness not as impossible rules, but as an invitation.
That's a really powerful shift, isn't it? Makes it feel welcoming, not condemning.
Yeah. You can almost feel how much this hits home for Sister Grace in her reflection afterward.
You really can. She says it resonated deeply, personally.
And her point about conviction, that it's a positive thing.
Yeah, a catalyst for change. That's so important. Reframing that feeling, it's not about shame. It's a prompt towards growth, towards transformation.
That feels much healthier. A nudge, not a condemnation.
A much more constructive way to see it, and that flows perfectly into Bishop Elijah's closing prayer.
Which kind of ties everything together.
It really does. It's quite comprehensive. Gratitude, acknowledging people feeling lost, wrestling with desire versus devotion.
He mentions those living in compromise but wanting holiness.
Yes, specifically praise for them. Asks God to meet them, wash them, give them strength and courage for purity.
And there's a declaration in there too.
A declaration of freedom, healing, transformation. It reinforces that core message of hope and change. And I like the emphasis on holistic holiness.
Meaning?
Body, mind, heart, intention. It's not just about actions, but inner alignment. Being set apart for God's glory, that really sums up their whole point.
And Sister Grace's final words nail it too. Be real, be changed, be holy.
Short, powerful summary.
Captures it all.
Simple, but profound. Encourages thought, encourages action.
Definitely. So for you, the listener, as you think about this deep dive, this conversation, what does this idea of holiness, as they laid it out, actually mean for you in your own life? And maybe how could you practically apply it, if at all, to your relationships, your choices, day-to-day, something to consider?